judges. More information available at SouthDakotaBarFoundation.com. Missouri River Energy Services, providing electricity and energy services to 12 South Dakota municipal utilities. Not-for-profit, customer-owned, customer-controlled, customer-valued. Missouri River Energy Services at mrenergy.com.
Boyce Law Firm, committed to our clients and building lasting relationships that transcend generations. Our lawyers provide trusted legal services through experience, integrity, and by contributing to the community that has shaped us for more than 140 years.
When you come to Touchmark, you have made a choice that will affect your future in a positive way.
And it affects all your family too, in a positive way.
We did not come here for the end, we came here for the future. And our future is bright at Touchmark.
As our 50,000-mile fiber network expands across rural South Dakota, new opportunities grow right along with it. Learn more at sdncommunications.com.
Joint session will come to order. The prayer today will be offered by Reverend Dallas McKinley Jr., and the pledge will be led by the Speaker of the House.
Let us pray. God, we come before you, and especially right now, God, we ask for just your blessing of wisdom. God, the wisdom to know right and wrong, but also to be strong and compassionate, to follow truth and love together. God, these are gifts from heaven, and I just ask your blessing of these gifts over our judicial branch, over our justices and each one that's going to be speaking before them this year. God, we thank you God, we ask for your specific and abundant blessing over them personally, over their minds and hearts and bodies. God, over their families and all the things that they touch. God, that you would just come and surround them, that you'd help them to do this difficult work with joy and in a way that will lead us to blessing as a state. Thank you, Jesus. In your precious name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Secretary of the Senate will please call the roll for the Senate.
Senator Boland, Breitling, Kamak, Castleberry, Crabtree, Kurd, Diedrich, Duhamel, Duvall, Foster, Fry-Mueller, Greenfield, Heinert, Hunoff, Johns, Johnson, Klum, Kolbeck, Maher, Neseba, Norstrup, Otten, Roll, Rush, Schoenbeck, Shanefish, Smith, Stalzer, Steinhauer, Sutton, Simmons, Tobin, Wheeler, Wick, and Zickman. Mr. President, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Will the Chief Clerk call the roll of the House?
Representatives Anderson, Elward, Bartles, Berthel, Beal, Blair, Bordeaux, Chafee, Chase, Schwach, Davis, Dennert, Derby, Deutsch, Drury, Duba, Fink, Fitzgerald, Goodwin, Greenfield, Lana, Gross, Hanson, Haugard, Healy, Hoffman, Howard, Jameson, Jensen, Kevin, Jensen, Phil, Johnson, Chris, Carr, Kientz, Koth, Ladner, Lesmeister, Marty, May, Mills, Milstead, Miss Gimmons, Mortensen, Mullally, Odenbach, Olson, Otten, Ernie, Overwig, Perry, Peterson, Kent, Peterson, Sue, Pischke, Poyer, Randolph, Reed, Rayfeld, Reimer, Schneider, Smith, Jamie, Soy, St. John, Stevens, Thomason, Tiedemann, Vasgard, Weiss, Wisegram, Weesey, Willardson, Wink, York, Speaker Gosh. Mr. President, there is a quorum.
Thank you. Madam Secretary.
Senator Kamak moves that a committee of 3 on the part of the Senate and a committee of 5 on the part of the House be appointed to escort the Honorable Stephen R. Jensen, Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, to the rostrum.
Comments on that motion? Hearing none, all in favor will say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. President announces that committee will be Senators Schoenbeck, Senator Kamak, Senator Heinert, and House members Representative Hanson, Kent Peterson, Johnson, Smith, and Lesmeister. Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and it is my privilege to introduce the Chief Justice Stephen Jensen to the podium. Chief Justice Jensen was appointed to the South Dakota Supreme Court by former Governor Dennis Dugard and was sworn in on November 3rd of 2017. He received his undergraduate degree from Bethel University in St. Paul, Minnesota in 1985 and his Juris Doctor from the University of South Dakota School of Law in 1988. Prior to serving in our Supreme Court, he clerked for Justice Richard Sabers on the South Dakota Supreme Court before entering private practice in 1989 with the Squarey Huff Law Firm in Sioux City, Iowa, and Dakota Tunes, South Dakota. Today, Chief Justice Jensen will deliver his second State of the Judiciary. This will be an important appraisal of our current system and the important changes to consider this legislative session. Chief Justice Jensen is intellectually minded, efficient, that is a pillar of our legal community. He is the epitome of respectful conduct from the bench, and he has a passion about respecting the law, upholding our Constitution, and protecting the rights of our citizens. The role of our courts is important in keeping a balance of power between government as well as our people. As the occupant of the state's highest judicial bench, Justice Jensen represents all that is good in our judicial system. Would the Sergeant at Arms please announce the arrival of the Chief Justice.
Would the members of the House and the members of the Senate please welcome the Honorable Chief Justice Jensen.
Good afternoon. Let me get this situated. Governor Noem, Lieutenant Governor Roden, members of the legislature, constitutional officers, my fellow justices, judges, unified judicial system employees, and fellow South Dakotans. As I start my speech, I have to indicate that my wife always has words of wisdom. So this morning before I left, she said, you know, don't worry about being charming, witty, or smart. Just be yourself. So that's what you'll get. Thank you for the opportunity to once again address this session of the legislature at the beginning of the legislative session. I want to start by expressing my appreciation to all my colleagues on the court, our judges and court staff for their great service over the past year. I am proud of the work that the UJS judges and employees perform each day across this state, and it is truly my pleasure to provide you with an update of our accomplishments. I want to share with you some of our challenges and opportunities that lie ahead for the court system in 2022 and beyond, in order for the court system to continue to faithfully apply the rule of law in every case without fear or favor. Since I became Chief Justice last January, I've had many people ask me what I enjoy most about serving in this role. My common answer is the unique opportunity to have a bird's eye view of the entire court system. It is truly awe-inspiring to observe and consider the impact of South Dakotans coming together every day to fulfill their respective roles in providing justice for all. From the 15,000 citizens who reported for jury duty over the past 18 months, in spite of the pandemic, and to the judges and court staff who participated in over 250 jury trials, conducted thousands of in-person hearings and trials, as well as many remote hearings. To my fellow colleagues on the Supreme Court, whose work ethic and desire for excellence is unparalleled. Every day I have the privilege of witnessing some of the best efforts of humanity to address many of the issues that come before our courts. Last year, I spent a significant portion of my State of the Judiciary message discussing my belief that the primary function of the court system in South Dakota is to ensure justice for all. The words equal justice under the law are written on the stone facade at the entrance of the United States Supreme Court building in Washington, D.C. Those words must also be indelibly etched into all that we do as a court system in South Dakota. But as we all know, saying it, thinking about it, or even wishing it to be so doesn't make it happen. On the farm, my dad used to use an old Irish proverb that says, "You'll never plow a field by turning it over in your mind." My dad was actually Norwegian, but he knew that that saying was just as true for plowing corn and soybean fields in South Dakota as it was for plowing potato fields in Ireland. I think the proverb is no less true or applicable to accomplishing the work of the courts today. So I want to discuss with you some of the action steps we have taken over the last 12 months and some of the steps we plan to take moving forward to achieve the goal of justice for all. In particular, these steps include continuing to create a culture of excellence in the court system, improving access to the courts for all persons, and enhancing the delivery of our services. Having begun as Chief Justice with a full pandemic in full swing, I do look forward when things get back to normal. While we have yet to catch up on jury trials, more than 3,000 people have been selected and served as jurors and decided many cases of import over the past year and a half. Working to protect the public and our employees from COVID-19 continues to force us to improvise. This has led to some benefits, however. Thanks to the IT staff, we have enhanced our technology and our ability to conduct remote hearings. The judges and court staff I've spoken with tell me that remote hearings have led to some greater efficiencies and improved access for litigants, and that some of these uses of technology may continue even after the worst of the pandemic is behind us. The UJS has also held more remote meetings, developed several online training formats that will save time and money for the court system. Many hearings, trainings, and meetings will still need to be held in person, so we will continue to work through these decisions in the months ahead. While COVID-19 has brought some challenges and caused us to be more innovative than ever, the process of handling and resolving cases that come through the courts daily continues on very much as normal. I can report that every courthouse has remained open during the past 12 months in spite of the pandemic. However, I do have to report there were a few snowy, wintry days in South Dakota last year that did close some courthouses for a day or two. Snowstorms, changing weather conditions, perhaps things are normal in South Dakota after all. I firmly believe that maintaining excellence in our courts must start by focusing on the greatest resource that we have in the court system, and that is our people. The judges and professional court staff that make up the UJS are directly responsible for accomplishing the task of justice each day. As such, my first and primary concern when I assumed office was to ensure that we were in a position to continue to attract and retain experienced and talented judges and court staff to do the important work of the courts. I want to express my appreciation to this legislature and to Governor Noem for approving the 2-year phased plan for salary increases for circuit judges and justices and the targeted pay raise for our clerks of court during the 2021 legislative session. These 2 pay increases provided an immediate morale boost for judges and clerks. But more importantly, it enables the court system to be more competitive in attracting and retaining judicial staff. I believe we are already seeing the benefits of this as Governor Noem appointed 3 excellent new circuit judges this past year. They include Judges Greg McGarrah, Jennifer Mamiga, and Stacy Vinberg Wickery. All 3 of these judges are well respected and bring a wealth of legal experience to the bench. Nonetheless, since last January, we've begun to see wage and inflationary pressures in our economy. These wage pressures are real and do not appear to be temporary in nature. When the Supreme Court began putting our budgeting plan together earlier this year, we heard a common theme from every circuit. They said we're having a difficult time finding qualified applicants and we're losing good people to higher paying jobs. In our fiscal year budget request to the governor, we limited ongoing budget requests to needed increases for employee salaries. It is imperative that we take care of our existing staff if we expect to maintain excellence within the courts. The governor's budget proposal for a 6% cost of living increase for all state employees is a significant step toward providing more competitive pay for our judicial staff. I support the governor's budget request and ask you to make salary increases a priority during this legislative session. Another action step we have taken over the past year is in the area of judicial mental health and wellness. Judges regularly face the pressures of deciding cases, determining the placement of children in custody disputes, and imposing lengthy prison sentences. In the most serious cases, also sentencing someone to death. These decisions are made independently by each judge and often weigh heavily. Mental health professionals have also begun to recognize the impact of secondary trauma on judges as they hear and see violent and horrific facts in the courtroom. All of this on top of the normal work, family, and COVID-related stress we've all experienced leave judges at a risk of burnout, depression, and substance abuse. To address these concerns, the UJS and the State Judges Association have partnered with the State Bar Lawyers Assistance Program to create additional support for judges. The program provides an opportunity for judges to reach out for confidential assistance and to obtain referrals for counseling. We've also begun to initiate more wellness discussions in our judicial training. It is critical that we maintain healthy and engaged judges sitting on the bench to hear and decide cases. The judicial wellness effort is one important part of doing so. Ongoing training is also an important component of maintaining excellence in the judiciary. Toward this end, we're currently working on a project to bolster our educational program offerings, particularly for newer judges. Few, if any, lawyers spend the amount of time in the court and hear the breadth of cases that are heard by a trial judge. So for newer judges, it is essential to bridge subject matter gaps in their professional experience to ensure proficiency in all areas of the court's jurisdiction. For instance, when I started as a circuit judge after 14 years in private practice, I'd never stepped foot into a juvenile courtroom. My second day on the bench, I had dozens of juvenile cases set in front of me and a great deal of learning to do. To address some of these experience gaps for our judges, I have asked several of our seasoned judges to create a series of training videos on various legal topics, including practical steps that may assist a judge in his or her transition to the bench. I want to particularly thank Judges Cheryl Gehring, Judge Sohn, and Mariah Tellenhusing for their heading up this project for us. These training resources will be cataloged and placed on the internet so that all of our judges may refer to these training materials as needed. We're also working on more opportunities for experienced judges to connect and interact with newer judges. Our UJS training committee has continued to develop relevant and practical training sessions for our biannual state judges conferences. Similarly, the UJS annual training is conducted for all of our staff to encourage them to continue to grow in their professional responsibilities. Well-trained judges and staff are an integral part of maintaining excellence and the confidence of the public as we decide cases. In March of this year, the Supreme Court Commission on Sexual Harassment in the Legal Profession presented its recommendations and findings to the Supreme Court. The commission was co-chaired by Justice Salter and Justice Devaney on the court, and was comprised of respected men and women from across the legal profession. The court appointed the commission after a survey conducted by the State Bar of South Dakota showed that approximately 1/4 of more than 400 respondents reported that they had experienced some form of sexual harassment while working in the legal profession. Many of these respondents did not report the incident, felt that there was no one who could adequately address the issue, or indicated that the issue was not effectively addressed when it was reported. In response, this court asked the commission to consider this issue and report back with recommendations. There are two I would like to highlight. The first is to begin mandatory sexual harassment prevention training, including bystander training every 2 years for all South Dakota judges, lawyers, and UJS employees. The second recommendation was for the State Bar to develop an ombuds position that will provide a confidential avenue for individuals to report and attempt to resolve complaints of sexual harassment in the legal profession. The ombuds person would create a process for both the accuser and the accused to resolve complaints without a formal investigation or disciplinary action. The investigatory and disciplinary process would still be available to handle complaints that either cannot be resolved or are not appropriately resolved through the ombuds informal process. The court has approved the commission's recommendation and adopted rules mandating the sexual harassment training. I believe it is important that we hold the legal profession and the court system to high standards of conduct and behavior. These changes are one avenue of doing so to ensure that every person involved in the legal profession is treated with dignity and respect. Another area we are continuing to address in the court system is administrative and court reporter staffing. I discuss these two categories together because they are somewhat related. Traditionally, our court reporter staffing has consisted of one court reporter for each judge. Although the court reporter spends a good amount of time in the courtroom and preparing transcripts, they also provide limited administrative support to their assigned judge by assisting with scheduling and other administrative tasks. In recent years, however, a critical shortage of professional court reporters has begun to develop. There are currently no court reporter schools in South Dakota, and court reporter schools in neighboring states have also closed. This has made it more and more difficult, not just in South Dakota, but in all states, to recruit and hire court reporters. We have had several court reporter positions open for months without qualified applicants. In some cases, we have made the decision to move to a permanent electronic recording position instead. In other cases, we have pooled more than one judge with a court reporter. These changes, of course, also impact the administrative support that's available for judges. Unfortunately, it does not appear that this problem will improve in future years. In the next 5 years, more than half of our court reporters in several circuits will likely retire. I doubt we will be able to replace these positions with professionally trained court reporters. While electronic court reporting does have a place, the technology does not allow us to replace the necessary accuracy and reliability of a professionally trained court reporter in taking down court proceedings. We have a court reporter committee in place, and we will continue to study this issue, as well as needed administrative support for our judges. I want to move for a few minutes to discuss about the issue of improving access to justice in the courts. During the 2021 legislative session, the legislature approved our UJS budget request, establishing funding to allow courts to provide impartial interpreter and translator services in civil cases for limited English proficient speakers. While counties have long been responsible for paying the cost of interpreter services in criminal and juvenile proceedings, the court system has never before had a reliable funding source to provide interpreter services in civil cases. As a result, limited English proficient litigants in civil cases were placed in the difficult position of relying on friends and family members, when available, to try and present some formulation of their cases to the court. Not only is the ability of these litigants to present their cases compromised, but judges also face the unnerving challenge of making critical decisions when they may not have all the facts. Professional and impartial interpreter services help eliminate this disadvantage. The State Court Administrator's Office has also developed a statewide language access plan to help guide judges and court staff in working with those who are less proficient in the English language. Each of these steps will help provide greater access and fairness to persons entering our courthouses. Another challenge for the court system is improving access to courts for everyone, regardless of their financial means. Litigation has become more and more expensive, and many people do not have the financial resources to hire a lawyer. As a result, the number of pro se litigants, those who are unrepresented, continues to grow, as does the number of their disputes. These cases require additional time for judges and court staff, and they present unique challenges to the court system to remain a neutral arbiter, yet also provide fairness to all litigants. Over the years, both the courts and the state bar have made efforts to address this issue by developing pro se pleadings, creating a helpline for unrepresented individuals, and training court staff who work with individuals who have not been able to afford an attorney. We have also enhanced funding for legal aid programs and made efforts to encourage lawyers to provide more pro bono services. Dean Fulton at the USD Knudsen School of Law in Vermillion has also begun an innovative program that will assist unrepresented individuals in family law cases in some circuits to provide support and mediation services to resolve difficult custody and family law disputes. The program also provides practical experiential learning for law students. All of these efforts are great, but there remains a significant need for legal services for those who are unable to afford to hire an attorney. As such, I have asked the State Court Administrator's Office to develop a plan to coordinate and develop these efforts between the courts, the state bar, and other entities involved in the legal profession. This will be an ongoing effort, but one that is important to assist the courts in providing a fair and impartial resolution of disputes and improved access to the courts for unrepresented individuals. Another focal point this past year has been on courthouse security. I spoke last year about the importance of courthouse security to adequately protect judges, court personnel, lawyers, litigants, and the public that frequent our 66 courthouses around the state. The UJS Security Committee began that work in earnest in the beginning of 2021 to develop a statewide security plan. The UJS also hired Scott Sheldon, who's a former South Dakota Highway Patrol lieutenant and a longtime member of the Executive Security Detail Team, as our first ever UJS Court Security Coordinator. This was a position authorized by the legislature in the last session. The UJS Security Committee, led by Justice Kern and Justice Devaney, has developed a plan that focuses on creating local security committee for each courthouse across the state. Each local committee will include court personnel, lawyers, and county officials who are vested in creating a secure environment that is appropriate for the unique security needs at each courthouse. This includes the creation of a local security plan, consideration of infrastructure upgrades, personnel needs, training, and ongoing assessments necessary to keep our courthouses safe. We have already begun by creating a pilot county security committee for one courthouse in each of our 7 circuits around the state. Our UJS security coordinator will serve as the point person and provide technical assistance to each committee as they work through this process. The selected counties include a mix of rural and urban counties to ensure that the UJS has experience in using these committees in both settings. Once we have an opportunity to observe and gauge the work of each pilot committee, we anticipate expanding the local security committee concept to every county in the state. One cornerstone of our effort to improve courthouse security is the UJS request for a one-time appropriation of $5 million during this legislative session. The UJS Security Committee would use these funds to administer grants to counties to cover 75% of the cost of approved security upgrades. The initial security assessments conducted by the U.S. Marshals Service and Homeland Security at a few courthouses indicate that these security upgrades will be expensive. For example, the cost of security doors, ballistic glass, and additional protections for courtrooms, clerk's offices, and other locations in over 60 courthouses will add up quickly. Breaking down the one-time requested appropriation between every courthouse works out to about $75,000 each. Some courthouses may not have a need for upgrades, while others may need significantly more than $75,000 in upgrades. The UJS will develop criteria for these grants so that the funds are all used for security enhancements, and there is fidelity and accountability for all funds used. These funds will allow the UJS to partner with counties and encourage them to make transformational security upgrades in our courthouses. For many years, the UJS has worked with counties to provide small grants for courthouse security. Often the total grant money available annually has been in the range of $10,000 to $50,000. While these smaller grants have been helpful, they've been very limited in scope. The one-time appropriation we are requesting this fiscal year is crucial to our courthouse security plan statewide. Without this funding, the needed security upgrades will be difficult, if not impossible, to achieve. This is a year like no other and creates an opportunity to significantly improve the security for everyone entering and using our South Dakota courthouses in the years ahead. I look forward to discussing this one-time appropriation with the members of the legislature as we move forward in this session. I've spent much of my speech so far talking about the work of the courts in the traditional courtroom setting. But the reality is that we live in a world of complicated family and societal problems where the conclusion of the case in the courtroom often does not bring about financial or final resolution. Sometimes the goal of justice requires more. One such example is in the area of the drug epidemic, which continues to be an issue that impacts courts and all South Dakotans. Over the last few years, the court system has employed new methods to fight this growing epidemic among those convicted of criminal offenses, including providing more evidence-based programming, enhancing probation services, and developing problem-solving courts and other community-based services. While these programs continue to make a difference in the lives of individuals, the issues that brought them into court are often deeply embedded. The path of poor choices that led to criminal behavior is not easy to change. A suspended jail sentence or prison sentence that promises incarceration if the individual reoffends is often alone not enough of a deterrent to keep that individual from returning to the choices and behavior that first placed them in front of the courts. This is where the important work of probation services and the problem-solving courts enters, by focusing on post-conviction supervision to provide greater accountability, community safety, and better opportunity for rehabilitation of those convicted of criminal behavior. At the start of fiscal year 22, UGS court services officers were supervising approximately 7,000 adult cases and 1,000 juvenile cases across the state. Many of these cases involved individuals who struggle with drug and alcohol addiction. The work of our dedicated court services officers to help these individuals obtain appropriate services and find success is both challenging and rewarding. Every judge and CSO could tell you stories of individuals who have gone from the struggles of addiction to living a productive life as a result of hard work of the individual participant and probation services. These success stories are often punctuated with failure along the way, but through the patience and perseverance of our CSOs and the community service providers, many individuals have been successfully discharged and continue as law-abiding citizens. During fiscal year 21, there were approximately 1,000 adult cases and 1,000 juvenile cases that were successfully discharged. Each individual discharged from probation represents one more person who otherwise might have been incarcerated inside the walls of our South Dakota prison or placed in a juvenile facility by the Department of Corrections at a substantially greater expense to South Dakota taxpayers. Likewise, our problem-solving courts have also had many successes since the first drug court began in South Dakota in 2007 as the Northern Hills Drug Court in Sturgis. Today, there are 19 problem-solving courts. These include adult drug courts, DUI courts, mental health courts, and veteran treatment courts that have all been created to address the rising number of nonviolent offenses, particularly drug offenses. Since these programs began, more than 700 individuals have graduated from our problem-solving courts. Many of these participants were severely addicted when they began and often lacked parenting, vocational, and other basic life skills. I attended several graduations this past year where I had the privilege of seeing individuals whose lives were literally transformed by our problem-solving courts. Their stories included lengthy sustained sobriety, being reunited with children who had been removed from their home, being the first in their family to pursue higher education, and obtaining full-time employment and stable housing. These positive changes likely would not have happened but for any of these individuals were it not for the hard work of our problem-solving court teams across the state. I'd like to tell you that every person that enters our programs goes on to live a sober and successful lifestyle, but that is not the case. The reality is that some probationers do not complete counseling programs, or their probation is revoked because of continuing criminal behavior. Similarly, some participants in our problem-solving courts fail to comply with program requirements and end up in the penitentiary. Others successfully complete a program, but later return to drugs or other criminal behavior. There's a significant cost to society and to their families when these individuals are back in the court system. These failures are also very demoralizing and deflating for judges, CSOs, and court staff who invest in the lives of these individuals. Yet we all know that human behavior and the life choices of each person sometimes runs counter to our best efforts at rehabilitation. Not everyone is going to make it. But what I do want to be able to say each year when I stand before this legislature is that we have made our best effort, that we have used the resources and services available in the most effective ways to create realistic pathways to freedom and sobriety. Toward that end, we have 2 action steps we'll be taking this year to help ensure accountability in our programming. The first effort I want to discuss for enhancing delivery of services is to develop a strategic plan for problem-solving courts. Over the past decade, we have focused on expansion and growth in our problem-solving courts. But it is time to look at our efforts and successes to ensure the long-term viability of these programs. The UJS Strategic Planning Committee will be evaluating each court for ongoing fidelity to the drug court model, enhancing strategic community partnerships, and supporting communities where the courts are operating, improving access to treatment and services for participants, defining the roles and responsibility of team members on the courts, reviewing standards for admitting participants, and maximizing opportunities for participation in the problem-solving courts. To assist the UJS in this effort, we have asked the Center for Court Innovation, through a grant from the Bureau of the Justice Assistants, to conduct an assessment of our courts to begin this process. We have already completed the assessment of the drug court team members across the state, and we will use this data and other information to begin developing a strategic plan in February. The second action step I want to discuss for enhancing delivery of services came about as a result of some hard questions I was asked this year. In one conversation, I was asked why we were unable to get more individuals coming through the court system into the Teen Challenge program in Brookings. It is a great program that we've seen many successes in transforming the lives of those addicted to substances. Another time, I was asked why we were unable to get offenders sentenced to the penitentiary into a drug court program after they are paroled. In response to both questions, I listed some very true and legitimate obstacles. But I later realized the questions were not intended to elicit all the good reasons we were unable to accomplish these tasks. Rather, the questions were rhetorical. They were asking, what was I able to do in my position as Chief Justice to address these issues? A third hard question was presented at a conference I attended this fall on young adult offenders. The conference was a reminder that both nationally and in South Dakota, most adult offenders that come through the court system are between the ages of 18 and 30 years old. They are a group of offenders that are most likely to reoffend and that we spend the most amount of time and resources addressing in the court system. These are some of the most formative years in an adult's life, and studies show that many offenders in their 20s think and act more like teenagers than adults. This does not excuse their actions by any means, but it should cause us to consider whether there are other services and efforts that may be more effective in addressing this age group. At the conference, one of the speakers talked about a very successful community-based program she started for young adult offenders and some of the different approaches they had taken. During her presentation, she discussed the struggles of working with this age group and how she began to develop this program after she asked herself the following question: am I making a difference in these offenders' lives? Because if I'm not, I need to find something else to do. Her question stuck with me, and I think it's a question that we all need to ask ourselves from time to time. With these conversations in mind, I have asked the State Court Administrator's Office to put together a plan to study obstacles and barriers to obtaining services and successful rehabilitation for those sentenced in our courts in South Dakota. The National Center for State Courts has agreed to provide technical assistance to us in this effort. We will also invite law enforcement, prosecutors, defense lawyers, judges, and other representatives from every area of the criminal justice system in South Dakota to participate in these discussions, including the Department of Corrections and the Departments of Social Services. It is important to me that everyone has a voice and a seat at the table as we study these issues. Some of the barriers may be systemic, requiring changes in how we offer and deliver services. Other barriers may be due to existing laws requiring attention at the next legislative session. They're complex and difficult issues, but if we do not study the issues and ask ourselves the hard questions, we cannot hope to find better solutions. As I conclude my address, I want to leave you with a thought from the 19th century British author and theologian G.K. Chesterton. He once wrote, quote, "Fairy tales do not tell children that dragons exist. Children already know that dragons exist. Fairy tales tell children that dragons can be killed." We live in a world where there are plenty of dragons to slay. But let's not mistake the people we disagree with or the people who are different than us as the dragons. Dragon slaying is about attacking problems, not people. I would suggest that our children and grandchildren need and deserve to see some real heroes slay some real dragons. They need to know that optimism in this world can make a difference, that acts of kindness, selflessness, and heroism are found in more than just fairy tales. That heroes live in the real world and continue to slay dragons today. Those heroes may be the teacher in a classroom, the police officer on a street, the coach who works with that kid who needs a little more attention, the stranger showing a random act of kindness, or a neighbor helping another neighbor through a difficult time. In the court system, we have many heroes that are doing good and slaying dragons every day. It may take the form of a court services officer who is a cheerleader, coach, drill sergeant, and friend to the probationer struggling with the dragon of addiction. It may be the judge who treats the angry, hurting young person in the courtroom with patience, respect, and dignity, and provides hope for change. It may be the drug court team member who can see the potential of success in a drug court participant that has failed many times before. It may be the deputy clerk who patiently assists the young, scared victim of domestic abuse with the paperwork to file a protection order against her abuser. They are all heroes, and you will find them in our court system every day. It's the kind of court system that I am proud to be a part of, and the kind of court system that our citizens, our children, and our grandchildren deserve. So let's go slay some dragons. Thank you.
Please be seated. Madam Secretary.
Senator Kamak moves that the joint session be dissolved.
All in favor of the motion to dissolve will say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. This joint session of the Senate and House of South Dakota is dissolved. Thank you.
You support SDPB through friends with help from...
When you come to Touchmark, you have made a choice that will affect your future in a positive way.
And it affects all your family too, in a positive way.
We did not come